Now, ahead of New Year's Eve celebrations, there are several voices calling for the curfew to be lifted. Among them, politicians and the establishments that would normally host New Year Eve events. To discuss, we're joined by the chairperson of the Long Street Association and owner of Beer House, Randolph Jorberg. Mr. Jorberg, thank you for being with us. You've initiated an online petition. How much support do you have in this?
Over 6,000 signatures at the moment, and a lot of support from all over the country from a wide spectrum of citizens, whether it is churchgoers that demand to be allowed to legally attend church services at midnight, or whether it is, people that just want to meet family and friends in a legal way without the risk of being arrested for, breaking curfew. And last but not least, obviously, business owners like me that, have for the last 21 months been suffering from liquor prohibition and extended curfews that are completely nonsensical, that make no point in protecting people from infections, because the virus, as we know, for the longest time is not working, any harder after midnight. And we have successfully, survived the fourth wave. And the president is now overdue to relax the measurements and finally end the silly curfew.
Yeah. So you say it's silly. It has been shown to make a difference to the trauma cases in hospitals. But are you saying that that's fine? The hospitals were given time to prepare, and we're seeing the cases coming down and the relative rate of hospitalization coming down, etc.?
Absolutely. I think my understanding from talking to medics on the ground is that, the COVID wards are empty. As I said, we need to send a signal to the world watching that the Omicron virus, the South African variant, is not as dangerous as it is, and we need an active signal for that. So showing the pictures of New Year's Eve festivities would be the best signal to send to the global community, to international travelers, that it's time to return to South Africa, to enjoy the touristic beauty, but also the active nightlife that you can enjoy, because we know tourists are not only looking for nature, they are also looking for the entertainment. And no tourist comes to South Africa if they know they are locked into their accommodation from after midnight till 4 a.m. Yeah. So it's just about time to let go of the curfew for New Year's Eve.
And you brought up the economic argument. Some would say this is just one evening or one night, but I guess it'll lead to more nights of enjoyment and reveling. But how much difference does it make to the revenues of establishments, a good New Year's Eve party?
We are not asking for the curfew to only be lifted on New Year's Eve. We are asking for it to be lifted permanently. And New Year's Eve is just the one night where I believe every citizen will understand why there is no point to the curfew. There is no point to keep yourself from traveling, to meet friends and family, to celebrate the new year together. And sorry, Mr. President, it's really impossible to celebrate the new year in a compliant way at 11 p.m. because the new year starts at midnight. And from midnight on, we are meant to be locked into our own homes for the next 4 hours. So it's just so obvious that the curfew cannot stay and needs to go. We need to be given our civil rights back. Effective immediately.
Yeah. Mr. Jorberg, final question. Even if you're right that the hospitals are empty, I don't think that applies across the board, but we are seeing this disconnect between hospitalization and death and the Omicron variant. However, I think people have become so aware of the impact of alcohol and the trauma cases that land up in hospitals because of the reports of the difference once curfews were imposed. Do you think establishments should take any responsibility for how adults behave? Because we are talking about adults after a night of drinking. Is there any thought around doing things differently or making people more aware of their behavior?
I would say yes. There is definitely a societal discussion that we need about alcohol and our sometimes toxic behavior around it. It is something that not the establishments, but also the producers need to lead. I know that BASA, as the Beer Association, is part of that conversation, but I would not deny that there might be the need for a deeper conversation about how drugs are being consumed in South Africa, how they are being advertised, and that there is a healthy way of dealing with them, but also an unhealthy way on the other side. Whether it is now, and that goes to all kinds of drugs, whether it is alcohol, whether it is currently illicit drugs, whether it is even products like sugar. So I'm very open to be part of that conversation. And I know that many stakeholders are, but we need to separate it from the civil freedom and our civil rights to be able to use our freedom of movement 24 hours a day and not only 20 hours a day, as for some arbitrary reason, government decided for us.
All right. Thank you very much for your time tonight. That was the chairperson of the Long Street Association, owner of Beer House, Randolph Jorberg.